Hello everyone, welcome to Inconvenient Truths. I'm your host, Jennifer Zeng. Right now, Xi Jinping is still visiting Russia and having talks with Putin, who was just accused of war crimes by ICC. This visit is no doubt very important for global geopolitics. It shows that Xi Jinping has made up his mind to ally with Russia, decouple the US, and to further close China and actively prepare for war. Actually, it was said that Xi Jinping has already set aside 2 trillion US dollars. Why do I say this? Below are some pieces of evidence. You might have already read this news that right now, before Xi Jinping's visit to Russia, the CCP held joint military drills with Russia and Iran in the Gulf of Oman. This is certainly a warm-up for Xi's trip to Russia and a sign of the close military relationships between the three countries. Several days ago, many media outlets reported the news that famous auditing firm Deloitte was fined 31 million by the CCP for failing to perform its duty in assessing the assets quality of China Huarong Asset Management Company. And Deloitte's Beijing operations also would be suspended for 3 months. In the meantime, Huarong was fined about 100,000 US dollars. When the news came out, some said even if Deloitte failed to perform its duty to audit Huarong, it must be that Huarong have provided false information. How come Deloitte was fined way much more than China Huarong? Isn't that very unfair? Actually, in February this year, many Chinese language media outlets also reported another piece of news, which was ignored by many people then. Then this news says the CCP has ordered its state-owned enterprises not to renew their contracts with the global Big Four accounting firms Deloitte, Ernst & Young, KPMG and PwC when they expire. The CCP said the reason was to ensure information security. So what does this mean? If we look back at this news now, it means that the CCP no longer cares about gaining capital or investment from Wall Street. Without the auditing report from the Big Four accounting firms, it is hard to get your company listed on Wall Street. Now, the CCP is proactively asking its state-owned enterprises to cut ties with these Big Four accounting firms. In July 2021, I reported on the news that Chinese version of Uber, Didi Chuxing, was suppressed by the CCP after it listed its shares on the New York Stock Exchange. It was forced to exit Wall Street altogether later in December 2021. So for me, the above two pieces of news tell us the same story. The CCP wants to decouple with the US on its own initiative. Why? It is planning on a final showdown. Now, let's talk about a possible 2 trillion war fund the CCP has set aside. A while ago, on February 9th, a famous Chinese economic analyst Lao Man published a Weibo post saying that 2 trillion US dollars has disappeared from China in the past 3 years. His points are, according to Chinese customs data, during the 3-year period from 2020 to 2022, China's total trade surplus was about 1.9 trillion. In 2022 alone, the surplus was about 878 billion US dollars. However, such a huge amount of US dollar surplus has not been reflected or appeared in any other macroeconomic data, such as China's foreign exchange reserve data, foreign exchange accounts, and commercial banks settlement data. It seems that such a huge amount of surplus income just disappeared out of thin air. Lao Man said, usually trade surpluses have two destinations. One is to become China's foreign exchange reserve increase, and another is to become deposits in domestic banks. However, China's foreign exchange reserve was about 3.1 trillion in 2019 and about 3.1 trillion in 2022. There wasn't any huge change. Also, according to the data released by China's central bank, the foreign exchange of commercial banks was 760 billion US dollars in 2019 and about 997 billion US dollars in 2020 and about 855 billion US dollars in 2022. So there wasn't a huge exchange with this either. Lao Man said most of the trade surplus was created by the private sector. For example, in 2022, private enterprises had a surplus of about 1.1 trillion US dollars. Foreign enterprises, including Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan, enterprises had a surplus of 170 billion US dollars, and the state-owned enterprises had a negative balance of about 448 billion US dollars, which means they had a trade deficit. According to the CCP's foreign exchange regulation rules, private enterprises must exchange the foreign currency into RMB, renminbi, within 1 year and are not allowed to let foreign currency remain outside China for a long time. Therefore, where the 2 trillion has gone has become a mystery. Lao Man's article sparked a lot of public attention and discussion. Chinese netizens have been making different speculations as to where the money has gone. The majority of speculation is the same. The money has been moved out of China via all sorts of illegal money laundering methods. Some say there isn't such a huge surplus. The customs data was fake. However, Chinese language YouTuber Lao Deng said in his program that according to his source in China, the 2 trillion was used by the CCP to secretly set up a fund called the Rejuvenation Fund. This was learned from Russia, which also put aside some funds 2 years ago when oil prices were high so that it could use it in difficult times. This fund is a sovereign wealth fund and is currently being used by Russia in the war. The reason the CCP set up this fund was to prepare for a future war against Taiwan. On the one hand, the war will cost money. On the other hand, when the West sanctions the CCP after the war breaks out, the CCP will still be able to buy energy and food. Lao Deng said He Lifeng, the current chairman of the National Development and Reform Commission and a member of the CCP's Politburo, is the party secretary of the Rejuvenation Fund, while Xi Jinping's younger brother Xi Jinping is the chairman. These are the two main people in charge. According to Lao Deng, there is currently only 1.5 trillion in the books for this fund. The rest of 500 billion is nowhere to be found and could have already been embezzled. Okay, next, let's watch 3 video clips. They were all recorded on March 16th, but by different people in 3 different Chinese cities. And they showed the same thing, newly recruited PLA soldiers at the train stations. They were sent by train to their destinations. Although on the surface, there was nothing particularly special about these videos, the chance for me to bump into 3 similar videos on the same day was very rare. I'd say I've never seen so many similar videos on the same day in previous years. So I feel like sharing them here. Well, this one shows on March 16th, new recruits at a high-speed railway station in Danzhou, Jiangxi province, singing the Chinese national anthem. The following one is from Changchun City in Jilin province, also on March 16. So this is from Changchun City in Jilin province, also at a train station. The following one is from Anshan City in Liaoning province on March 16. Well, that's all for today. If you like my content, please spread my channel and videos or go to my website at jenniferzengblog.com. That's jenniferzengblog.com. Sign up for a membership or make a donation to support my efforts. Thank you. See you next time.